So does your Doom Eternal look like absolute dog? Well, you might have accidentally clicked on the wrong video, because today I'm gonna show you how to make it look like dog too, just the other way. Versus it being colorless and bland, I'm gonna be showing you how to make it blindingly colorful, or at least explaining how my videos become blindingly colorful. As what you guys don't know, secretly I've been trying to make an army of visually impaired people. You know, not blind per se, but at least where they can't really distinguish where exactly the dislike button is, and they just keep constantly hitting the like button and commenting random shit instead of leaving the channel, as YouTube loves that. That's engagement. We need more of that. Now, before we get into it, some quick house cleaning. I can't 100% guarantee that your game is going to look quite like mine, basically because everyone's hardware is different, and there are some tweaks that I do post-editing. But what I'm going to do is show you all of my settings and how I came to the conclusion that these are the settings that I want to play on. They still seem to piss people off, so I might change them in the future, but this is what I've been using up until this point. I also want to point out that I play on PC and on PlayStation. PlayStation, I use HDR, PC I do not, so there's a little post-editing magic that I use to make the two gameplays look a little better, as this is what they look like before I throw them in the editing software. I mean, without even explaining it, my HDR settings on PlayStation make it look completely different than PC, so I have to try to make those two gameplays align in some way or another. Let's start this with basic visual settings. I'm showing PC gameplay, but this is how it looks on console for me too. Just play normally, no render settings, no HDR, nothing like that. There's no filters that I'm adding. This is pure gameplay. If your gameplay doesn't look like this, I don't know what to tell you. You may need a new TV or a new monitor altogether, but I'm assuming these are the basics that everyone is starting off on that has a working TV. This is what I start off on PC and console. I'm gonna leave PC alone for now because I don't do anything to my gameplay until after I edit, and I'll talk about that last. But with that being said, let's jump over into console. Now, how I get my console settings looking like this is a mixture of HDR and a render mode that I had no idea was even active. I don't know how that happened, but just going side by side, you can already tell there's a big difference. Now, showing you my HDR settings, they are shot to all hell. And to be honest, I was afraid to mess with these because I most likely would have forgot what they were at. Anyways, my HDR brightness is at a 7, my HDR saturation at a 1.4, HDR min stop at a -8, white point at a 0.20, and HDR max stop at a 9. I have no clue what all of these do, but what I will say is HDR saturation is something that is very easy to overdo. Now, I know I said I didn't want to mess with any of these, but I just remember off the top of my head, it's very easy to overdo that. There's a pretty big difference between 1.2 and 1.4, with 1.3 not hitting a proper medium between the two. So that's something you're going to want to keep an eye on because it's very easy to overdo. And again, I have the render cinematic mode active when I'm playing, so it balances it out. You might be like, oh, that's cool and all, but what's your game look like with your render mode off? Fucking horrible. Rough. That's the best way to describe it. This is some gameplay of Super Gore's Nest with that render mode disabled and just my HDR settings running rampant. By itself, that warm screen that everyone's talking about, it's basically my HDR going crazy, but I like to apparently throw on cinematic render mode on top of that, and what that does is it increases the game's contrast, essentially making things like hallways and areas with not so much lighting a little bit darker, while also making blues very, very noticeable. They pop out much more. However, if you've ever experimented with the cinematic or even the gritty render mode, you'd notice things like armor and shotgun shells are diluted as far as their color goes. Or even in the beginning, as I just showed, when you're going to pick up weapon mods or even the chainsaw, that blue and green hue is basically gone in those two render modes. And then that's where I kind of go a bit too far, and then go in the editing software and do some tweaks to try and make stuff like greens, yellows, and red pop a little bit more. Which, I mean, all the gameplay you've been seeing has been raw, unfiltered, which I normally never upload. But let me know if you like the color grading the way it is, then I'll probably just keep it as is. Before we talk about the editing software and the tweaks I make in that, something I want to point out is the bloom in Super Gore's Nest. When I play with my HDR settings and the render mode thrown on top of that, yes, I noticed that the lava is blindingly bright, but when I'm playing, it doesn't really bother me, it doesn't affect me. I get it, it can be distracting distracting watching, but it's just something that doesn't really catch my eye or catch my attention or distract me in any way. Besides, how many games do you know that make you go blind by staring at lava? Just gotta throw that one out there. But while we're on Super Gore's Nest, you can obviously see how HDR with the render mode is on PlayStation. Comparing that to PC gameplay, you can tell PC gameplay right off the bat is a little flat. So what I do is I throw this in the editing software and I try to individually tweak the PC gameplay to be a little bit more in line with the gameplay from the PlayStation. And this is the end result. You can tell that the colors are a little bit more vibrant. The screen looks a little more warm, whereas with other games, if you try to bump the saturation, it looks different. But in my case, I'm trying to emulate HDR, which still isn't quite there. I mean, if you look at the lava as comparison, it's much brighter on PlayStation. But I guess when you're swapping between gameplay to gameplay, I guess people really don't notice the background all that much as far as comparison goes. And to be honest, as far as color grading, I don't have a general recommendation. My best thing would be to, in my case, try and align both gameplays to make them look like they're captured from the same device. On top of, depending on what the environment is, try to take the environment's colors and make them pop more. So in the case of Super Gore's Nest, whereas with the HDR, you might want to lower the brightness a little bit, and on PC, you want to make the reds pop a little bit more. But on a level like Cultist Base, I try to make the blue pop a bit more, as you know, it's an ice level, so you want it to be visually stimulating but complementary to whatever the environment is. I also try to bank off of whatever contrast there is, so even though I'm trying to make blues pop more in Cultist Base, I also pay extra attention to stuff like greens and reds. Whereas back on Super Gore's Nest, I try to focus more on greens and blues and mute the reds a little bit. But I guess that's more being technical. That's more, again, in the editing. On Cultist Base, I was showing the color grading that I do in my editing, but this is how it looks before I do any editing, and this is with the render mode and the HDR settings that I showed. So by contrast, even without my editing software, the colors do look a little flat in comparison to, like, you know, Super Gore's Nest. It just fucking shines like the surface of the goddamn sun. But hopefully this helps. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to have me post gameplay unfiltered, let me know, because I've been getting a lot of questions on how I make, you know, Doom Eternal look the way that it does. And in short, it's a mixture of HDR as well as fine color grading on my part. I tweak with shit that I shouldn't, basically, to sum it up. But hopefully this helps. Let me know what you guys think. Again, if you want me to post unfiltered content, let me know. If you guys have any recommendations on any videos that you'd love to see on Doom Eternal or anything else, feel free to post this stuff as well. I got a video on master levels coming out, if not tomorrow, Sunday for sure. And of course, if you guys haven't joined the Discord yet, feel free to do so. It's a perfect place to find people that play battle mode, talk about Doom Theory or any other game in general. It's just been growing substantially over these past couple weeks, and I can't thank you guys enough that have joined and that have been active in the Discord. I really appreciate it. But like always, guys, my name is Cynic. Thank you all so much for watching. But until next time, my friends, I'll see y'all later. So I think it was last weekend that was QuakeCon 2020. It was an event that was about 12 hours of streaming, 45 minutes or whatever this is.
Pivot. We're not gonna play Prey. We're gonna talk Prey.